as I am. So we're going to talk about gardening for bees and the native plants that they love. I'm Susan Karasoff with the California Native Plant Society Yerba Buena chapter. So we'll talk about what are native plants, what are pollen specialist bees, what are bee habitat needs, specialist bees in plant communities, specialist bee plants in the gardens, container gardening for specialist bees, year-round buffets for people in wildlife, and native garden resources. So what are native plants? Native plants evolved here. They evolved in our varied soils and with our varied weather. So we've got 6 kinds of soil in our 7 by 7 square mile San Francisco. That includes sand and clay and chert rock and serpentine rock and sandstone rock and loam. It's crazy. And we have 3 north and south fog and wind banks. And every month we get a varied amount of precipitation. We always have dry summers, but the winters can really vary in how much rain we're going to have. The local CBS weatherman is going to be the November speaker, talking about our weather and what we can expect in the future. And that is going to be fascinating. But if you take a look at that, we've had as little as 7 inches of rain and as much as 50. So a few years ago, when we lost 1,300 trees in San Francisco because they came down, that was only 32 inches of rain. We could get a lot more than that. And so there's a good chance that we will. And so our local plants are adapted. They are adapted to this kind of weather. They're adapted to the drought. They're adapted to the additional rain. They're adapted to the fog and the wind. They grew up here. They love it here. And they evolved together in plant communities. So San Francisco Estuary Institute, I am this ridiculous fangirl of that group. They've done a bunch of different projects, and one of them was called Hidden Nature, where they worked with the Exploratorium to figure out what plant community was where. And there's an interactive website for that. You put it in an address and it can tell you what your plant community and your soil was back before we changed a lot of things. So that's pretty useful. A lot of the things that most of us plant in would be former dunes, dune scrub, oak woodlands, grasslands, and near the creek or the lake, the riparian areas. So who's got sandy soil? Oh yeah, a lot of sandy soil people. Dune scrub. So oak woodlands can live and do live on sand, but they're also really, really great on clay and chert, which is what I've got. Anybody else on clay or chert? Yeah. Anybody on sandstone or serpentine? Okay, good to know. It's going to be fun. And there's a lot of good information about this. Las Politas has got good information. CalScape does. SF Plants Finder. National Park Service associated with Presidio's got a really good site on this. And then, of course, Hidden Nature. So there's lots more work you can do when you look into the different kinds of plant communities that we had, because the secret to planting in a plant in plant communities means you can be a terrible gardener. It's very convenient. So the nice thing about planting in plant communities is that all these plants evolve together underground. And so you've got everything from the tiny little bulbs and the short rooted annuals to tap roots from things like our oaks. You've got the nitrogen fixing plants like our California lilacs and our peas. You've got everything you need. You've got all of these different plants. They are sharing resources underground with each other, sharing them with underground mushroom networks. If anybody plays board games, there's a new wonderful underground mushroom board game called Undergrove by the same woman who did Wingspan. It's a really fun game where you can learn more about our underground mushrooms. But those mushrooms, they take a little tax and sugar, and they'll pass water and nutrients back and forth. And that is what helps our plant communities survive drought and survive a whole lot of water. Also, above ground, not everything can bloom for 365 days. everybody's only got just so many resources to spend on their roots and their leaves and their flowers and nectar and pollen. And so they are depending on growing in that plant community to feed all of the insects, and then the insects are feeding other insects, they're feeding birds, they're feeding mammals that also eat insects, and they feed the rest of that system. But it's the insects that take the specialist insects that take the energy from the leaves, because the leaves are getting it pretty much from nutrients and rain and sun. They're moving that energy through the rest of the system. I don't know about you, but I have yet to be able to photosynthesize myself, so I'm depending on somebody else to do that. And so all of these plants are blooming at different times, and this way they can keep all those insects, all the adult insects, fed while the baby insects are eating things like leaves or special pollen. So every bee is a habitat specialist. Honeybees are not native. They come from Europe and Asia and Africa. They're great bees. They're not native here. They're wonderful to have in the landscape because they are adapted to a lot of the pollination for the plants that came from Europe and Asia and Africa. So they're great at pollinating lemons. That's wonderful. But we would really like to have the rest of our pollinators around. And a bunch of them are ground nesting. Some of those ground nesting bees, like the bumblebee, there are ground nesting bees that like to nest in bunch grasses. There are some of our bees that only nest in pristine dunes. The bee on the top right is the silver digger bee. We thought that was extinct, and we thought we hadn't done the paperwork fast enough to show that it was endangered, and it went extinct, we thought. And then the Presidio ripped up a bunch of ice plant and ciabatta grass from their dunes, and they replanted with natives. And this silver digger bee showed up again. They just don't like invasive plants on their dunes, and I can't blame them. We've got a bunch of bees that like to nest in deadwood. None of them are nesting in livewood. They'll be fine. They're not going to burrow into your live plants. And we've got stem nesting bees. So it's a good excuse to have blue elderberry and to have things like sunflowers in the garden, because those are hollow stemmed plants, and that's what our stem nesting bees can go ahead and make their nests and have their babies be relatively safe. There's a wonderful iNaturalist project. If you haven't used iNaturalist, it's a ton of fun. It's the tool we use to BioBlitz. I believe eBird is also used in BioBlitz, or just iNaturalist. Bob, Sophie? Just iNaturalist or eBird? Yeah, okay. eBird is another great citizen science tool. But on iNaturalist, which I spend a lot of time on, oh, by the way, I took none of these pictures. All of these pictures come from iNaturalist. Thank you very much for all of you who are taking pictures of bees and bees on flowers. And there's a wonderful iNaturalist project called Ground Nesting Bees. I've spent way too much time on it. It's a lot of fun. So we're going to spend most of the time today talking about pollen specialist bees. California has got over 1,500 native bees. There's 4,000 native bees in all of the United States. We have over 1,500 of them here in California. And of those 1,500, over 600 of them are called pollen specialist bees. So just like butterfly and moth caterpillars have to have the leaf they co-evolved with to eat, as the monarch butterfly does with the milkweed, that caterpillar's got to have that plant. That's the same for all 1,300 butterflies and moths in California. Well, it turns out that 600 of our native bees co-evolved with special pollen. And so when their moms put together their little baby bee lunch boxes for them, they have to have a certain kind of pollen. So they can't take any pollen from an introduced plant. They can't even take any pollen from most of our native plants. It's a small set. So I'm going to call it obsessed, but I mean, it's useful, right? Because I made this presentation with pollen specialist bees. There is an iNaturalist project about California native bees and another iNaturalist project about pollen specialist bees. So what I'm going to ask of you is to plant a year-round buffet. If you are living relatively locally, you are living in a frost-free zone. Every day, we need to have something blooming in our garden. It's really important to have those plants that bloom December to February and the plants that bloom sort of July to November, because we've got to be able to feed our adult bees, adult butterflies, the adult insects. And those are the plants that if you're blooming December to February, you've only gotten half your rain, if that. And so you're gambling that you've got enough resources to bloom and produce nectar and pollen. And so seaside daisy, camisonium, manzanitas, woolly sunflower, all of those currants, that pretty pink flower that Sophie, you were showing earlier, that the Randalls got a lot of. You want that in your garden. Choose one. Choose any of them. Choose as many as you can plant. Honestly, if it's got the word seaside or dune or ocean in it, it would really prefer sandy soil. But plant it. Plant something that's blooming in the winter. And then everything else is really, like most California natives, they're pretty sure they know how much water they got. And so they're comfortable blooming March to June, which is why it is a ridiculous floral display going on right now. It is gorgeous. Like everything is blooming its hearts out. We got 16 inches of rain this year. Average is 21, 16 is pretty good. Our native garden is happy with 14 inches, 16 inches is fabulous. So great floral display out there. That's because most things bloom now. And they're really going to drop off come July. And so the things that are blooming in the summer, so sunflowers, goldenrod, mock heather, grindalea, buckwheat, thistle, coyote bush, golden aster, clarkia is summer blooming, deerweed, evening primrose, the California aster. The poppies are great. The more water you give them, they'll just keep blooming. These are the things that we need to plant too. So I need you to plant winter blooming things, and I need you to plant sort of summer and fall blooming things so that we can just keep that floral display blooming. If it looks gorgeous to you, it's going to look gorgeous to bees. Now, all of those little cute labels there are telling you how many pollen specialist bees love that plant. But I assure you, all of the generalist bees love those plants too. I spend too much time in Excel. Apologies. You're just going to see a few Excel charts, just a few. So of all of the different native plants that we've got, 68 of the genus. So species are things like hummingbird sage, Salvia spathica. The genus is all the salvias. So all of the data, according to Jared Fowler, and he's the one who pulled all this information together for the Western pollen specialist bees, information on the internet. There's a link at the bottom. All of that information, all of that is at the genus level. So you've got a bunch of caterpillars that are depending on specific species. They need this particular buckwheat species. Or the pipevine swallowtail needs the Dutchman's pipevine. It needs a specific species of plant. We're lucky, as far as I can tell with the pollen specialist bees, we're okay at genera. And there's a couple that are good at family, like the squash bees are a famous example of pollen specialist bees, and that's the whole squash family. And that's why you can find squash bees in Mexico, you can find them in the United States, you can find them here in San Francisco, and you can find them in Canada. They're great. There's a bunch of different squash. Humans love squash. We took squash everywhere. Squash bees came with them. They're happy. Got a few of those pollen specialist bees that can eat a family's worth of pollen, but most of them are at the genus level. And so we're going to look from phenomenal to still really good. Phenomenal is the sunflower, 100 pollen specialist bees. Mock heather, grindalea, golden aster, goldenrod, seaside daisy, phacelia. Most of the phacelias are annuals. If it's an annual, they usually have root systems this big. Sunflowers have tap roots, poppies have tap roots. The rest of the annuals all have root systems this big. You can grow them in a takeout container with some drainage holes at the bottom. So that's a great plant, takeout container. The Camisonia, all of those are sand only. So for those of you with sand, you can grow that. Honestly, most of the seaside daisy, those are almost all sand. The thistles, a lot of those need well-draining soil. Golden bush needs sand. So for those of you who are on sand, you can grow a lot of these fantastic plants. It turns out that of these over 600 pollen specialist bees, there's 231 of them that only eat one kind of pollen in their baby bee lunchbox. So it's an interesting list. It's different. It's the suncups again, the Camasonia. It's the willows. It's the buckwheat. It's Phacelia. 37 pollen specialist bees, and 12 of them only eat Phacelia pollen. Clarkia, it's another annual, great in containers. Calochortus, for us, it's the yellow Mariposa lily. It comes in all kinds of different colors. It's a bulb, so that means takeout containers. Goldfields are annuals, takeout containers. Poppies, deeper takeout containers. Baby blue eyes, takeout containers. Meadow foam, takeout containers. So there's a ton that we can do for pollen specialist bees with a takeout container. It's great. Introduced plant pollen feeds 0. Whoops, that should 0 pollen specialist bee species, baby bee species. So we want them. So fewer introduced plants. Ideally, just the ones you're going to eat. Actually, my way of thinking about it is every plant in the garden, at my garden and all my green spaces that are public green spaces and all of the schools, every plant everywhere needs to feed somebody. It can feed people. I'm fine with lemons. Or it can feed wildlife. Or it can feed people and wildlife. There's a lot of great edible native plants that feed all of us. But just pretty? We can do pretty. Look at this. These are pretty. So much pretty. So we just looked at these Excel spreadsheets, and now we're going to look at this one. It is a completely different list. So this is the list for the caterpillars. So for those of you who are familiar with Douglas Tallamy, he spoke recently at the Bringing Back the Natives tour. He's done a lot of Zoom talks. He's got some great books. He's got a grad student who back in the early 2000s figured out that it takes 6,000 caterpillars to feed one nest of baby birds, which is why there's at least a half a dozen people in here who are with the Golden Gate Bird Alliance, because the Bird Alliance people have realized that if we want birds, we need caterpillars. If we need caterpillars, we need native plants. And so all the bird people, hands up. Yeah, a lot of birders. Good, it's great. This is the optimal. This is the optimal list for the birds, for the caterpillars and then for the birds. Introduced plant leaves feed somewhere between 0 and 2 caterpillar species. It turns out the tomato hornworm, boy, can that eat a lot of different species. That little white butterfly that you see, that's the cabbage white, that's from Europe. Yeah, no, we don't care about that. Honestly, it's just going to eat brassicas anyway. Also, hundreds of other species, which is why it's done so well here. It is considered invasive in British Columbia. We have not declared we haven't yet, David. We haven't decided that the cabbage white butterfly is invasive yet, have we? Okay, good. I don't have to care. It makes sense. Ugh. Yeah, it's just not a good scene. So if you look at these lists and you think, gee, those are really different. I look at these lists and I think, geez, those are really different. They're recommending a lot of different native plants. And I'm not even talking about the beetle pollinated plants like Western wild ginger that we can eat, oh, by the way, and that root is delicious. And spice bush, those are beetle pollinated. Or gnat pollinated plants like the pipevine, like the Dutchman's pipevine that I keep going on and on about, because those leaves only feed one caterpillar, but it's the pipevine swallowtail, and it's gorgeous. And we're bringing those pipevine swallowtail eggs and caterpillars and adults to Bug Day here at the Randall on Saturday at that free event, 10 to 2. I'm going to be back there. It's going to be off the hook. The Randall has started planting pipevine because they want to be able to raise those caterpillars here and release those adults. It's going to be amazing. So do come and see them. But, and that Dutchman's pipevine, that's pollinated by gnats. And you're like, gnats, why do I have to care about gnats? Well, A, I want more Dutchman's pipevine. And B, those gnats are the favorite protein of hummingbirds. Hummingbirds are tiny little birds. They need tiny little insects for protein. They've got to have protein for their eggshells. And so we should care about gnat pollinated. I promise I'm not going to end up walking through a gnat pollination entire presentation, but just to let you know, bee-pollinated plants, plants that the caterpillars depend on, and we just talked about beetles and gnats. When we plant our local plants and we plant them in plant communities, we bring in all of those pollinators. We bring in all of those benefits that keep us all alive. So let's talk about bees and plant communities. And we're going to start with all that sandy soil. We're going to start with the coastal dune and dude scrub. So every time you see a star like that, that baby bee needs just that pollen. So lots of emphasis on everything with a star. And thank you again if you're taking pictures of bees and putting them on iNaturalist. And so some of these, you can look at the plant list, and I'm not going to read out the names in Latin. You can look at the plant list and go, huh, okay, if I plant a bunch of those plants, those plants are going to do well together, and I'm going to have all those bees. If you look at the bee on the lower left side, there is exactly one of those that has been sighted in San Francisco. And that is because Noreen led the Pier 94 redo with the San Francisco Port and Golden Gate Bird Alliance. That's the only sign of that bee. But you guys put in the plants over on Pier 94, and now we've got the bee. Ah, thank you. Thank you so much, because we have that bee. And so it makes a difference. It makes a difference when we add these plants. All of these plants absolutely adore sandy soil. More great bees that love plants that love sandy soil. So that one on the bottom, the Megachild parahita, that's the aster family and the peas family. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of plants. But still, pollen specialist bee, special lunch boxes. Oak woodlands. So all of these bees love pollen from plants that are annuals and have like this just really short root systems. So if what you've got in containers, you can grow all of these and they're gorgeous. There is one Phacelia that's a perennial, but all of the rest of them are annuals, and they're beautiful. And so pink flowering currant, so if you had that on your presentation, the Randall's got that out. There's just a little bit of flower left. They're starting to produce fruit. The fruit's still green, so don't eat it. Those are edible for people. They are winter blooming, which is why they're at the end of their flowering season. And we do have a bee. There's one woman down in San Diego who has pictures of that bee, and that's why we have this picture here. The bee is called a chaparral currant bee. We should have those all the way up past here. Anyway, let's put a lot more of those currants in our landscape. They'll be gorgeous in the winter. They will feed our overwintering hummingbirds and our early arriving queen bumblebees. And then they'll also provide the pollen for that one pollen specialist bee that it absolutely adores it. Baby blue eyes can take a lot of shade. It's an annual. The checker bloom with the pretty pink, the lower left, just gorgeous. That is an interesting plant, very low growing. It's great on sand or clay, and it's summer deciduous. So if it had a terrible rain year, it'll just lose its leaves earlier and then it'll come back. And then that extremely cute bee is on huckleberries and lupins and redbuds. Redbuds aren't native here, I don't believe, but the picture on the internet had one with a redbud. So there you see it. Real pretty. Grassland. So we've got not only do we have 100 pollen specialist bees on sunflowers, but many of them absolutely just need sunflower pollen. Calochortus is this beautiful bulb. Mariposa lily comes in all kinds of colors, containers, poppies, deep containers. Monardella, it's gorgeous. It's a really beautiful plant in the mint family, which means you can eat it. You can eat the flowers and the leaves. And it's just got one pollen specialist bee, but it's a solo pollen specialist bee, so we have to plant it. Amsynchia is really hard to grow, I hear. I do know somebody who's going to try to grow it from seed, but understand that when you go down to the Carrizo Plains to see, the big floral display, that's the only place I've seen Amsynchia. It is native here. Grass and plants, annuals, meadow foam, Lacininia is Goldfields. Those that is the only picture lower right of that one bee that needs the Goldfields. I've never planted the death camas, but there's a bee that only uses that pollen for its baby bees. But that must be interesting. And then the Andrena columbiana that can use at least 2 different ones. But yeah, so many choices of things that we can put in our gardens that need quite a bit of sun. And then some more pollen specialist bees that can take at least a few more plants. Be careful with that Calistigia and the convolvulus. We grew that when we lived in Los Angeles, and that is a very aggressive plant. It will just cover things. If you've got a really tough spot, yeah, that's a great plant for it. And it's got pollen specialist bees associated with it. Chaparral, we don't have a lot of chaparral in San Francisco, but there's a lot of chaparral in the East Bay, and there's a lot of chaparral in other parts of California, just not us. But we do have manzanitas that are native here, and there are manzanita pollen specialist bees. Buckwheat, we're talking about squash, at least for us. The manroot is the plant that the squash pollen specialist bee would eat here, and it's yeah, it's a chaparral plant. And then the thistles. So I would think a chaparral plant could deal with a lot more soil types, but the thistles tend to really only want good draining soil. And just be careful. There are terrible invasive thistles, and then there's special native thistles. So just don't pull out a thistle until you're absolutely sure of what it is. And if you do have a place that's a little pokey, that you've got someplace sunny that you could put something showy where you'll end up with a lot of bees. Boy, do the bees love the thistles, not only the specialist bees, the generalist bees too. Please consider putting in some thistles. And then wetlands, if anybody's got a creek or a pond or an alkali sink, which I don't think we have here, but they've got in the East Bay. There's 3 pollen specialist bees that are on iNaturalist, that are on that really pretty plant that all need heliotrope, and they only need heliotrope. Willow, so we don't have a lot of trees. Interesting with the bees, a lot of them prefer these sun-loving plants. Only a couple of trees. There was the redbud earlier, and there's the willow. Willow's an amazing plant. It's over 300 different caterpillar species, plus pollen specialist bees, plus solo pollen specialist bees. Ranunculus is really pretty. That's sort of a garden plant. I don't know that ranunculus, other than the native ranunculus, are going to feed the pollen specialist bees. So if you've got a little bit of a wet area, please put in the local one. The same thing with the clover. Please use the local clovers, the trifoliums, and Blenosperma is a wetlands plant. And then this will be the only time you see desert plants. I don't know anything about the desert, but they do have pollen specialist bees, and these are some examples. If you have desert or you have friends in the desert, they can also be planting for pollen specialist bees. So let's look at these. We've looked at them from the plant community side, where you plant a bunch of lupin, you get a bunch of different bees. You plant a bunch of sunflowers, you get a bunch of different bees. Now we're going to look at it from the garden perspective. So we're looking at number of baby bees, baby pollen specialist bees. We're looking for those solo pollen specialist bees with the star. I've got a deep fondness for a long blooming plant because a lot of us have got very tiny gardens, or whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Yay. What am I doing here? Sorry. A lot of us have got tiny gardens, and so I want something that's long blooming. And number of butterfly and moth caterpillar species, and whether or not it needs more water than a drought tolerant plant. Every plant you put in needs water that first year and that first summer. And then what's called a water use classification landscape species, low water or very low water, you don't have to worry about subsequent summers unless you had a really terrible rain year. But some things really need continued water. Things like the huckleberries need continued water. They're delicious, so they're worth it. But yeah, that we are marking the water needy plants. So we're going to look at ground covers and shorter flowers, compact shrubs, taller shrubs, vines and trees, containers, the generalist bee favorites, because we're going to get all the way through this and you're going to go, oh, wait a minute. There's something called bee plant. Where is it? It'll be on the generalist bee favorites. And then tough plants for those of us who just are truly bad gardeners or new gardeners in California, or you just have a lot going in your life. You want to plant for bees, but you've got like an hour and then you need to get on with your life. Understood. Tough plants. So ground covers. Again, sandy soil, lots of gorgeous ground covers. The Camisonia, the seaside daisy, the harlequin lotus, the sand verbena, the cryptantha, the pincushion. You can grow it, I cannot. And look at how many pollen specialist bees you have. They love the dunes and dune scrubs. They love your sandy soil. And then we've got a couple that can deal with the not sandy soil that are ground covers, and that's checker bloom and creeping snowberry, and both of those are deciduous. Checker bloom, summer deciduous, creeping snowberry, winter deciduous. They have a few pollen specialist bees, but every pollen specialist bee is important. So there they are, cute. Oh, and creeping snowberry, if you have a bizarrely shady spot, oh, this is your plant. We've got it in, we're trialing it in some areas. And we have it in some ludicrously shady areas. It's fine. Shorter flowers, so sort of this tall, like taller than flat, but shorter than about 3 feet. Bush sunflower, California aster, lomatium, coyote mint, California poppies, that fiddleneck, great plants. Just showy, fun. Some of them are long blooming. California aster, incredibly long blooming and late blooming. So an important plant. We've got that in our garden, and I put it in all of the public spaces that I work in because they're just so tough and so long blooming. These need sandy soil. So mock heather, dune golden bush, milkfetch, cinquefoil, and agaceris. Some of these are actually hard to find in nurseries. We do have, what, 8 or 9 people propagating? And so if you're having trouble finding something, the first place, if you live locally, I would ask SF Botanic Garden, email them your plant list and say, this is what I'm looking for. And that will encourage them to start providing more native plants. They did that long, recent move with their nursery. And so they just really need some help. The East Bay's just got so many great native plant nurseries. East Bay Wilds, Native Here Nursery, Oaktown, just fantastic native plant nurseries. I got some envy there. You can find anything you need. And if you don't find what you need, talk with the people who are working there. Once we provide a lot of requests for plants, we have a higher probability of getting them. I've been asking people at various nurseries for hummingbird sage for years, and for ages and ages, couldn't find it. 2 years ago, oh yeah, we started to see more of it. And I started to still be able to find it even in the afternoon, which is when I get around to shopping. So yeah, you ask, it helps them to understand what the demand is for. And compact shrubs, so they're a little taller, but they're not big and sprawly. Deerweed is great. So deerweed is one of those plants. It grows on dunes. It grows in dune scrubs. It grows in chaparral. It grows in grassland. It can take a little bit of shade, and it's just a really great long blooming plant. The coastal green hairstreak uses that as a caterpillar plant, and 29 specialist bees. Evening primrose, I know people who won't plant it because it seeds aggressively, but I love anything that will like cover my difficult spaces. So it's a great plant. Senecio is a little hard to find, but important for pollen specialist bees. Yarrow, really tough plant. Can handle some shade, very long blooming, grows from seed. You cannot go wrong. Mule ears is great. Pearly everlasting. It's a pretty cute plant, and not enough people grow it. So shorter, compact. You can look over it. You can plant it and still see over that shrub if you're planting it underneath your window.
It's also good for tea, yarrow.
Yes, thank you. That's nice. I don't do that often enough. Thank you. And we also have an edible plant list, although I don't think I've got yarrow on that. So thank you for that. So we got a bunch of plants that you've got to be careful when you buy it. Some of them are very specific about soil, like Grindalia is great. Camporum and Hirsutella, really tough plants, any soil. But there's a stricta and stricta platyphylia for Grindalia, and they have to have sandy soil. So, and they're also very short compared to Camporum and Hirsutella. So they're both, one of them is flat, stricta platyphylia is flat, and the other one is like this tall. So stricta. So just be careful when you see Grindalia, just don't go, ah, Grindalia, perfect. It might not be. If you're on sandy soil, you can definitely grow all of them. But for the rest of us, just be careful. Lupins, same thing. Most of them, I think we've got 6 species native here. 5 of them have to have sandy soil, although 4 of them are annuals, to have tiny little root systems. But the other one, albifrons, actually an albifrons colonist, both have to have well-draining soil. Arboreus, which is the yellow one, possibly consider not growing that in sandy soil. It doesn't just grow in sandy soil, it really reseeds. So keep that for the clay soil. Besides, the purple ones and the blue ones are prettier. Golden aster, again, a real variety between flat and tall, sandy soil and any soil. Manzanitas, all of them are soil dependent. There are flat, there are shrubs, there are trees, all are super soil dependent. Monkey flowers are interesting. They actually vary in terms of water needs. Some of them are things like seep monkey flower. If it says seep, it really needs the additional water. And then some of them are really tough. And the buckwheats are very soil dependent. So be super careful as to which ones you look at, but they're all fantastic for bees. I mean, the Grindalia, 84 pollen specialist bees. Golden aster, 78 pollen specialist bees. And the lupins, 70 caterpillars and 16 pollen specialist bees. Fantastic. So let's look at some evergreen shrubs. We've got woolly sunflower. It needs sand. The thistles need sand. The sage, so our local sage, the hummingbird sage, Salvia spathica, that's the one that can take a little bit of shade. All the rest of the California sages need full sun, but they really vary in size and shape. Salvia sonamensis, which is native in Sonoma, it's a ground cover. You've got shrubs, they really vary. Lepicinia, that's a picture of the Southern California one, because I couldn't find a picture of a bee on ours, the Calcinia. It's got 1 pollen specialist bee, and that particular bee can eat another couple of mint family members, but it's long blooming. It's a great long blooming plant. It started blooming in January. It'll bloom till June. So I love that plant. And then California lilac. There are ground covers, there are shrubs, there are trees, and they are just as soil specific as anything else, but they're absolutely gorgeous. And if you walk outside when it's sunny, like tomorrow, and you look at a California lilac, it's going to be covered with bees. Over 100 different caterpillars use the leaves, plus pollen specialist bees. What's not to like? And then these bigger, tougher evergreen shrubs, goldenrod, fantastic, a really tough shrub. Although, Bob, you just sent me something that said that you want to make sure your goldenrod doesn't have any exposure to additional light at night, because that will affect how it blooms. So you won't get as much of a bloom with it. So maybe put it in a space that doesn't have a lot of additional light. Coyote bush, ridiculously tough plant. There's some of it at the Randall. Yerba Santa, I don't grow it, but it grows in the East Bay, and it's got a bunch of pollen specialist bees, including solo pollen specialist bees, and it's really showy. And huckleberry, I mean, delicious berries for people, pollen specialist bees, over 50 different caterpillars. It needs some water, it needs some shade. What's not to love? And some deciduous shrubs. Almost all of the currants are deciduous. There's one from Southern California called Catalina Perfume. It's evergreen. For some reason, they have it here at the Randall. But they can take a variety of different sun and shade and soil. So just double check when you're looking on Calscape and when you're shopping. 3 pollen specialist bees, winter blooming, 80 different caterpillar species, and gorgeous. What's not to love? Snowberry, so there's that low growing version. Is there a question? Yeah. That's oh great. Yeah, we got a bunch of flyers. There's crazy number of flyers. So Snowberry comes in sort of a flat version and a taller version. They're both deciduous. They're both very shade tolerant, and they both have pollen specialist bees, solo pollen specialist bees. That Calistoga we were talking about, yeah. The caution significant maintenance, I am not kidding. And the red bud is extremely pretty, not native here, needs extra water. So if I have seen people use it as a street tree, just understand you just really need to keep watering. It's gorgeous. And if you're going to put it in, please put in the Western red bud, not the Eastern. The Eastern really needs water. And that red bud, one of our 2 trees, the willow, the other tree here. And then for those of you who've got those wetter creeks, ponds, lakes, these are your plants. They're beautiful. Oh, dogwood, oh, by the way, it wants extra water and a lot of extra maintenance. It's not like an East Coast dogwood. It wants to be a thicket. The willow wants to be a thicket. You need to make sure it goes into a space that can be a thicket. Container gardening, because we can. So deeper containers, the sunflower and the poppies, they both have these interesting spiky like root systems. So if what you were trying to do is hold a hillside and you just put in some netting and you put in coyote bush and California lilac and toyons and oaks, because they have these deep tap roots, and you just need some additional tap rooty something, use those sunflowers and use the poppies. They just have little bitty tap roots. Well, they're not little bitty, they're pretty long. That'll help hold that hillside while everything else grows in. And Mariposa lily is what I hear from people who have them in containers, because we've got them in the ground, is that they have the additional year of bulb grow underneath. And so it will eventually get sort of deep into a bucket, but you are welcome to start in a takeout container. They're gorgeous. I know people who just collect all of them, so you're warned. They're really pretty. Clarkia, it can deal with a lot of shade, easy to grow from seed, blooms all summer, and 12 pollen specialist bees, 5 of whom are solo pollen specialist bees. So we have an excuse. And that adorable caterpillar in the lower right, that is the Mariposa forester. And that little caterpillar only eats this annual. So when I'm spending a lot of time yelling at bees on the internet because they decided to co-evolve and only pack annual pollen for their baby bee lunchboxes, I'm also yelling at that caterpillar. I'm like, how are you only eating an annual? Anyway, it's not listening. We need to plant this. I grow this everywhere, including in public spaces. It's easy to grow and it's gorgeous. And for people who are like, I don't know if I want to grow native plants, this is a really easy one to start with because it's just God-spockingly gorgeous. All of the Clarkias, they're all gorgeous. They're all, oh, in terms of the one with the Is that the question you were asking? Or which of these is gorgeous? Because they're all gorgeous.
Sounded like you were talking about species.
No. So for the caterpillar, there's that one species. But yeah, for the Clarkia, we've got those 12 pollen specialist bee species. Sure. So we're very lucky that a lot of people spoke with Native Americans and recorded that information, and that's been collected. And the search term to look for that is ethnobotany. Last month in March, we had a Native American chef who spoke to us, who's written a cookbook. She's got a great presentation that should be on our YouTube, is on our YouTube. And we have a flyer with information on what's edible. I would never, never, never eat anything unless you are absolutely sure what the plant is and that part of that plant is edible. So if you go on a walking tour with someone who knows what the plant is and that part is edible, that's when it's safe to do it. So the Randall is working on modifying or evolving their garden to have not only more native plants, but more native edible plants. It still does not mean you should eat everything in this garden. You should not. Not everything is native, and even of the natives, not everything is edible. But there are a lot of edible plants. And so ethnobotany is your special term. And then that flower over there, we can talk afterwards and I'll show that to you. But yeah, the Randall Garden, if you come back on Bug Day, I'll be here 10 to 2, and I'll show you where the edible plants are. They put in thimbleberry. They've got the beach strawberry. They've got Yerba Buena. It's a great garden. Yeah. More container plants. Phacelia, Clarkia, baby blue eyes, Gilia, all great in containers. And great with some shade. The yellow ones seem to need more sun. Tidy Tips, Meadowfoam, Madia, Goldfield, Lupin, those are all annuals. The Death Camas is a bulb. Again, I haven't grown it, and so I have no idea how easy it is to grow. I have seen it for sale in the East Bay. I hear that it is not kidding about the death part. So yeah, really put that where you're not going to have anybody dig that up and eat it.
Is that the same as Star Lily?
I think it also has that name. Yes, yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Although I think it changed the name to Toxicoscordion from from the one that starts with a Z. If it's got the name toxic in it, they're not kidding. Or yeah, toxic or death. Yeah, really good sign that you should definitely not eat that.
So poison.
Oh yes,
Poison hemlock.
poison hemlock, poison oak. Yeah, don't eat these things. We're not kidding. So for all of you who are like, yeah, I know some plants my bees love and you haven't shown it to me yet, this is the bee favorite for the generalist bees. You're still going to have a ton of happy bees with these. They just aren't going to feed the pollen specialist bees. Still, plant them. Early arriving plants like that barberry, no pollen specialist bees, but I mean, it is a really tough plant. It can take a lot of shade, evergreen, showy flowers, edible fruit, as long as you are okay with really sour fruit. I've had robins just try to protect the barberry plant from me. If you're familiar with a Persian dish called zeresh polo, that's got dried barberries in it. It's a tasty plant for people as well as for wildlife. And because it's long blooming and it's winter blooming, it's important for those overwintering hummingbirds and those early arriving queen bumblebees. The cherries are amazing. The maples are amazing. The strawberries that are in full bloom right now are amazing. Chinese houses, blue dips. Stachys is really interesting. Stachys is shade tolerant, lot of flowers. You're going to want to be real careful with which stachys. Some of them need more water than others. Some of them can take more shade than others. These of the entire mint family, because I plant a lot of mint family native plants because they're easy and I'm a terrible gardener. Stachys is the easiest and it is the preferred plant for the, I cannot tell you how adorable they are, mint moths, the California mint moth and the voluptuous mint moth, which is a really pretty pink. They're both super cute and they prefer Stachys to Lepichinia. They prefer it to Yerba Buena. They prefer it to hummingbird sage. Okay. Bee plant. Bee plant is great. Very tough plant, a lot of shade to full sun. Rhizomes, Stachys is rhizomes, the bee planter rhizomes. Just if you're in a community garden, just be careful. Everyone who's in a community garden hates rhizomes because your plant's going to go, fantastic, and move out of your plot. I watched somebody pull California aster out of a community garden, and then I took it home and took it to a friend who rehabilitated it. But woo, anyway, elderberry's fantastic. It's like it might as well be a bird feeder. It's got these great flat flowers. Tiny insects show up, the bees show up, the birds show up to eat the insects, the birds stay and eat the berries. We can eat the blue elderberries, not the red ones. Be really careful. But it's really clear. If the berry is red, don't eat it. And then it's got those hollow stems. And so you've got bees able to nest in it. It's fantastic. California rose we've got a few of them. They're all really thorny, but if you need to keep critters out of a garden, it's one way to do that. The onions are wonderful. Oh my gosh, they're delicious. Every onion tastes different. They're little tiny bulbs, so great in containers, summer blooming. Every onion tastes different, so you have to get them all. They're fantastic. Cow parsnip, I believe, Susan Mullini, you will not have it in any of your public spaces because it will just take over. I have got some really tough spaces that are eroded clay, and so yeah, we're using cow parsnip on that because nothing else will grow. Hmm? Interesting question. So it is not the same part. So the parsnip plant is the underground root, like the onion. Everything about the onion, including the bulb, the underground part is edible. The leaves are edible. The flowers are edible. The seeds are edible. Everybody needs to plant the native onion. It's just delicious. And don't eat the bulb. You don't get the flower the next year, but you can eat the seeds. It's yummy. It needs to be a food trend. Sorry, back to cow parsnip. What I hear is that the young stems are edible, but I have not tried it. So I can't recommend that you do that. I don't want you trying to eat something that someone else hasn't tried already. Does that make sense? So this is the problem with common names as opposed to Latin names. Latin names are Latin, but common names are like, hey, parsnip, I bet that root is edible. Yeah, don't do that, please. So Yerba Buena is amazing. They've got some at the Randall, shade-friendly, ground cover, evergreen, fantastic. Give it a few years of water and then it can just live on fog. It's fantastic and delicious. And the bees adore it. Dune tansy, big bee fan. Back to if it's got dune in the name, it needs sandy soil. So we've got a few things here that are East Bay. Penstemons East Bay, milkweed, the bush mallow, and the blue curls are all East Bay or south of there, but they're long blooming, really tough plants. And I do love a long blooming, summer blooming, really tough plant. And the woolly blue curls are in the mint family, and those leaves are delicious. Tough plants. There's actually a lot of these plants are tough plants. The top tough plants, California aster, rhizomes, yarrow, it'll really spread. Farewell to spring, it'll spread, but it's gorgeous. Grindalia, just the camporum and the hirsutella are tough. I just can't speak for the stricta and stricta platyphylla because they have to have sandy soil. They might be tough, but only in sand. California poppies, absurdly tough. And coyote bush, real tough. Is there some question about that? So I'm all about the buffet, feeding people, feeding wildlife, feeding people and wildlife. So we talked about the bee buffet earlier. We're going to talk about the adult butterfly buffet. that there's a lot of overlap with the specialist bee buffet, the hummingbird buffet, and the ethnobotany edible native plant buffet for people. The native plant buffets are feeding the baby insects, and the insects are feeding the rest of our insect ecosystem, and that's why we want a buffet where they're included and invited. Adult butterflies. We're looking for as much of a year-round display as we can get. Manzanitas, seaside daisies, and the California lilacs, outstanding. The lupins, the onions, Phacelia. Oh my gosh. So many of these plants are plants you saw earlier. The buckwheat, the gumweed, the goldenrod, the sunflowers, the coyote bush, the golden aster, the yarrow, and the mock heather. All amazing. All really useful. They're all looking for sort of something flattish, because when you come up with something tubular, you're fighting with the hummingbirds, and the hummingbirds, oh, they'll fight with you. And so they just, if it's tubular, they're like, okay, we're just going to let the hummingbirds have it. And then the sharing happens in the winter when there's just not a lot of alternatives. For people, all of those sage leaves are edible, and the flowers are edible, and most of those flowers are spicy. Yerba Buena, the leaves are edible. Miner's lettuce right now. It's right at the end. It's all blooming its heart out. Red maids, only for sandy soil, so I can't grow it. But those greens are supposed to be edible. Blue dips, the bulbs are edible if you cook them. Blue elderberry, the blue elderberry, not the red, but the blue. Those berries are edible. Yampa is really fun. Those are edible seeds. It's in the same family with anise and fennel. So super tasty. You could eat the root, but if you do, you don't have the plant. So yeah, just eat the seeds. Poppy seeds are edible. They will set off a drug test. So just be smart about that. Huckleberries are ridiculously delicious. They do need extra water, and they need a little bit of shade. They like a really rich soil. So when you plant those, add some amendments. They can grow in sand as well as clay. We can grow hazelnuts. You need 2 for nuts. Local cherries. The thimbleberry is my favorite. The Randall's got a few thimbleberry plants. There's a lot of it at Golden Gate Park. We've got it in parks like Ina Colbreth Park and Lombard Reservoir, because it is my favorite plant. It is rhizomes. It'll spread, raspberry family, but it doesn't have thorns. The fruit is ripe for 1 day. It ripens in the last 2 weeks of June. And so you just need to be there. If a berry is still there when you get there and it's bright red, help yourself. The birds didn't manage to get it. No, that's thimbleberries.
Oh,
Yeah, the strawberries are also edible. Strawberries are edible. Thimbleberries are the last 2 weeks of June. Are the strawberries the last 2 weeks of June? Yeah, I don't eat strawberries, so I Mike, I asked your mom to eat one of our native strawberries and let me know what it tasted like. She's like, it tastes like a strawberry. Oh, does it? Okay. Did you eat it too? Good, thank you. Our local cherry tree, the Prunus ilicifolia, has edible fruit. Those currants have got edible fruit, except for the Catalina perfume. I just haven't seen any ethnobotany report on that, so don't eat that. Coyote mint is mint family, so you can eat those leaves and the flowers. The madia is for the seeds, and the monkey flower savory is leaves and flowers. So lots of things that we can eat, that we can plant in our gardens year round, that will still feed wildlife. So where can you find more information? So we're going to talk iNaturalist, because I never stopped talking about it. Doug Tallamy, CalScape as a plant selection tool and as a source for plants. CalFlora, oops, I misspelled that. I'm not really sure how I did that. Native plant lists, bee books, and a podcast and a bee identification tool. So iNaturalist has just this incredible, every picture you've seen has been from iNaturalist. And this is a screenshot of the pollen specialist bees of the Western United States. And you notice how you have very, very few red dots here. It's because we don't have enough pollen specialist bees, and I want them all. Honestly, I want them all. So we need to plant more. There is another project called the San Francisco Native Ecosystems. It is all 500 of our remaining native plants. So there used to be 700. And it is 29 of our 35 butterflies. Those red dots are either the remaining butterflies or pollen specialist bees. and the green dots are the native plants that we've added. So the most important thing you can do is plant. If you feel like taking some pictures for iNaturalist, that just really helps us understand what plants are where and what bees and butterflies and birds we still have in our area.
Those pink dots mean?
The red dots, are they pink? Oh, they are sort of pink. So if it looks kind of see-through and transparent, it's because it is either, if it's a green transparent one, it's because it's an endangered plant. And if it's a red transparent one, it's because it's an endangered butterfly or bee. And we've got, of our 35, I guess we've got 40 butterflies now. 6 of them are federally endangered or locally rare or threatened. So, but we're doing better, putting plants in the ground. Because this is what it looks like close up. Just because of the size of the dots, it looks like we're covered, but we're really not. Bob Hall, you've been working on Sunset Boulevard, as have a lot of you have been helping with Sunset Boulevard. And so that is this interesting, actually do have, that's this. So you can see whole row of native plants, and you can see red dots where we've got butterflies, and you can see where the Randall is, and you can see Twin Peaks. And so you can see where we've got clumps of native plants and where we've have people who've been able to find some butterflies and some bees, but we could do more. And the water company is actually talking about doing more with Sunset Reservoir, and they are working on Laguna Honda Reservoir. And so there's all kinds of opportunities to add native plants, both in your own garden and in public spaces. And so we're one of many groups that do a lot of gardening in public spaces. So if you want to do that, we need help right here at the Randall. We need help on Sunset Boulevard. We need help at Laguna Honda. Mike and I live over in the northeast part of the city, so I got 15 spaces up there we could use help with that are public. So lots of opportunities. Doug Tallamy, if you have not heard Doug Tallamy speak, basically I'm telling you how to put into action what Doug Tallamy has recommended that we do, which is plant a lot of keystone plants, plant a variety of local native plants, plant for those specialist pollinators like pollen specialist bees and caterpillars. Have those leaves on the ground so that your caterpillars can crawl off and live through their cocoon phase, because they're still delicious to birds even in their cocoons, which is why they look like dried leaves. They're hoping not to be found. Talk to your neighbors, donate some plants, donate some seeds, help your neighbors just create that corridor to the next space. And please avoid spraying insecticide, herbicide, rodenticide, fungicide. It's our critters will show up and eat. Yes. Yes.
Did it happen to be those at the park outside close to Galileo High?
Galileo High has got miner's lettuce? Yeah. So I know where Galileo is because I know someone who desperately wants to renovate that garden. We need to talk. I just need permission from someone at Galileo that they won't rip out the plants. So California Native Plant Society donates plants to schools, public green spaces, and community gardens. That would include Galileo High. We just don't have anyone at Galileo to talk to. And I won't go, even Cal Parsnip, I will not go put in a space where someone's gonna go rip it out. There's so many spaces where I could put a plant where I'd be welcome. Oops. You absolutely can. Not only can you, I do. Oh my gosh, yeah, I've been eating miner's lettuce for months now. You can absolutely eat it. So the only issue with eating something in a public space is you just want to be observant about whether or not there's been dog activity.
Yeah, washing.
Yeah, so there are places, we should talk afterwards, Because if you're going to Galileo, you're close enough to come work on some of my projects. Come to our May 4th Francisco Park tour, because there's a lot of edible native plants there. And we did add some miner's lettuce seed, and it's doing really well at Bay and Larkin, that particular corner. Just saying, we have permission. Yeah. We need to talk to someone, because I just won't put a plant without permission. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Those container plants. All of these can be put in containers. All of them. They do really well in containers. There's no winter coverage, but those Clarkia are summer bloom, and the poppies are summer bloom. If you add any extra water to them, they'll just keep blooming. Yeah, they're a really tough plant and long blooming. You're right, they're mostly spring blooming, but we do have all of the Clarkias are summer blooming. That's why it's called Farewell to the Spring. And the onions, where's the onion? The onion is summer blooming, and it's a bulb, so yeah, you've got things you can plant. Yeah.
Someone in the chat just said you have not mentioned the importance of providing nest sites for ground nesting bees, which comprise 80% of native bees. I think you did though.
I think I did, but I went past really fast, and Zoom told me, but I just didn't get around to listening, that I wasn't talking loudly enough. So yes, absolutely, ground nesting bees, and a little bit of space where they can dig. So that would be space that doesn't have ice plant on it, space, yes.
Why do you recommend?
So there are people in here, lots of people in here that can speak to planting for birds, but water bubblers are recommended specifically for planting for birds. And it's because birds need the water. Actually, some of the bees and butterflies seem to get the liquids that they need from the plants, but there are some that seem to like to have water. And yeah. So water bubblers a lot more work. We put out a little pan of water starting in July and August and September. If there's any kind of smoke in the sky, we absolutely do that, because we get so many insects and birds from elsewhere, as they all try to find some place that isn't full of smoke, and they really need the extra water. Water bubblers are for people who can take care of it. And we've got friends who do that. We haven't done that yet because it's just more work, but a little pan of water does really well. And a conservation hardscape is that water bubbler, and yellow LED lights, please. Those seem to be the least attractive to moths, and we don't want to distract moths from those night blooming plants that are supposed to attract them. Please take out your lawn. We've got all kinds of great flat plants that are so much prettier and so much more fun. And lawn doesn't feed anybody. Advocate for native plants. The Climate Action Plan redo is coming up, and we're going to ask that they put in metrics. We'll ask again. And please help remove invasive species. David, you used to be on the California Invasive Plant Council, and you still work on removing invasive plants. Actually, most of us here weed. So I can show you the delicious edible weeds. Please take out all the fennel. Please take out all the nasturtium. It's delicious.
Radish.
Oh, and the radish, also edible for people. So yeah, take those things out. Oh yes, and there's a delicious invasive onion called the three-cornered leek. Thank you. And it is blooming now. Please take it. Please take the whole thing out. Like eat the bulb and the leaves and the flowers and seeds, delicious. We've got,
Like, get rid of the poison, but if you like, cook it duly, it can also be edible.
which one?
Yeah.
Aloe vera. Really? I didn't know it was edible. I thought it was just topical. Oh, is it invasive? Oh.
Yeah. And possibly to other animals as well.
Oh, thank you. Excellent. Aloe vera. I'll take that out the next time I see it. I mean, did I say that? Thank you.
The strawberry, which can be grown in trees that my friend and I tolerant are feeding my seed. So you like see those round berries?
Oh, is that Arbutus marina? Oh yeah. I hate that tree. Yeah. So the good news is they're edible for people. That's a European it, fruit tree. The strawberry tree, but it's not native here. It gets pollinated, but nothing eats. Yeah. So the strawberry tree, please don't plant it. No wildlife eats it. The only wildlife I've seen that eats it is the Norway rat. So just nasty. Don't feed the Norway rats. So if you're intrigued by any of these plants, you can look them up on Calscape, and Calscape will tell you about the plant. It will tell you about the caterpillars that it feeds. They are working on adding bees. I don't know when that's going to happen, but they've had me beta test it and some other people. So they are working on that. And then you can also search for where is that plant available. It's got the nursery list. There is the strawberry tree? They're everywhere. I can't get rid of them. I can't get them off the San Francisco street tree list. I'm trying. Well, you're welcome to eat them. They're everywhere. I mean, I'm not here to take them out. They're not eucalyptus. They're not going to burn us down, but I'm with the California Native Plant Society. I can do better for wildlife and people than the strawberry tree where the only critter that eats it is the Norway rat. Ew. I mean, you're welcome. Really, they're in my parks. Please come eat them. Yeah, Francisco Park, Ina Colbreth Park. They're the street tree at Sunset Elementary School in APG and Giannini. Please eat them. Please keep the rats from eating them.
That are good for the native bees, where would you get those? Can you grow them from seeds? And where would you get those kinds of seeds as opposed to just whatever sunflower seeds probably get in a store? Or does it matter?
Yes, so it's Helianthus annis and Helianthus californica or californicum, I can't remember which one. Those are the ones that are most local here. Calscape would give you that whole list of which ones and then who's got the seeds. I personally got my sunflower seeds from someone who got her sunflower seeds from someone who had, anyway, yeah, sorry. They're free. I might have some in the back of my car. Anyway. Sure.
How long or until what point should you leave all of them in place for you?
Leave it as long as you can stand it. Like, please just leave it. So sunflowers are tall. Sunflowers are weirdly tall for an annual. So like stick that in the back. So that's what we're doing in our public spaces and what friends of ours are doing in their gardens is they're just sticking them against a back wall. And the friend of mine who gave us the seeds, Jen, is using like a clothesline to like hold it up. And she's just leaving it there. So the nice thing about sunflowers is that according to last month's speaker, they're entirely edible, like not just the seed, but the head and the leaves and the stems. So again, try not to eat the stems because we need to leave them for the bees, but you could. you could eat the stems. I think she said you had to stir fry them, but I'm like, that sounds delicious. And Calscape will tell you not only where to get the plants, but also where to buy seeds. And so there's Larner seeds, there's SNS seeds. At CMPS, we actually do collect some native seeds. So especially if you're on sandy soil, let us know. And we'll work on getting you some local seeds. Yes. Sure. Yes.
Are great. Those things are known to be nothing bayberries, and they can be cancerous to the humans, so we can use them to make candles.
Wow. Oh, I've heard of bayberry candles. Thank you. That's really cool. I just thought that was just some pretty name, but okay, that's pretty cool. Thank you so much. So be careful when Calscape recommends something to you, double check, actually triple check the soil because they've got a 10-mile radius. They still have a 10-mile radius. They know they have a 10-mile radius. Anyway, we've talked, so check the soil type. Calflora is also really great. Both Calscape, you can sort of see the dots, and Calflora have got good ranges. Calflora's got a great, has just got a much more precise definition of when things bloom. And so I find that really helpful. And I'm, again, looking for those long blooming plants. Those plants that have got sort of more of a long north-south range are going to do better with climate change. Something like the huckleberry is just gonna, and the hazelnuts are gonna need a lot more help to get through climate change, which is fine if it's in your own garden. But if it's in a public space, just keep that in mind. So we are the California Native Plant Society Yerba Buena chapter. We've got a biodiversity resources link on our website, and we've got a bunch of flyers here in the room. We've also got them all available for free on our website on the biodiversity resources link. So we've got bees and butterfly caterpillars and edible plants and hummingbirds and birds and shade plants and long blooming and color. So some of these things are still in text. So if any of you would like to volunteer to put them into a pretty illustrated format, that would be great. We've got a bunch of people who have volunteered, which is why we have some really gorgeous flyers now. So we're always looking for volunteers to do a variety of things. And the Native Here Nursery in the East Bay has also got a really nice set of information about native bees. And then there's some really great bee books. San Francisco State wrote a great book, Gretchen LeBune, and UC Berkeley's now retired Gordon Franke wrote a great book, California Bees in Bloom. And then they've got some wonderful resources on the web as well. And Xerxes, which is a nationwide pollinator conservation organization, has got some good information. Oregon State has got this wonderful pollination podcast. A lot of honeybees, a lot of mason bees, a lot of it is commercial beekeeping, but they do include some stuff on native bees, some stuff on butterflies, and they did one on hummingbirds that was adorable. And they recently they developed an identification key to the Pacific Northwest native bee genera. And so that's available. This is all free. Pollination is on any podcast tool, and Oregon State has got all of this information for free on their website. You can just download the bee identification tools. They have a lot of the same bees that we do. And so that's pretty fun. I really am grateful to not only all the people who are taking pictures of bees and of plants and of birds and of butterflies on the internet, but also to the people who are identifying the bees. It's just a lot harder than you'd think. We are the California Native Plant Society Yerba Buena chapter. We have free lectures. We do free hikes. We do restoration all over the city in public spaces, including here at the Randall, Sunset Boulevard, Bernal Cut. Actually, go ahead and raise your hand. Bob, Sunset Boulevard. Sophie, Bernal Cut. Eddie and Noreen, the Eco Patch, Janet, Pier 94, Susan, Bison Patch, I'm with Russian Hill Neighbors as well. So that's the northeast part of the city, Francisco Park. David, I know you do a lot of weeding in some of our natural areas. We do weeding every Wednesday and have since the 60s. Anybody else who's stewarding a public space that I've missed, please?
Several that species of shrub. Should you put out a handful of flowers or a bunch of flowers to make it worthwhile?
Okay, so what I've heard is 3 foot by 3 foot. Ridiculous. This is San Francisco. That is some people's entire planting space. So for me, it's how much of a year-long buffet can you get out of your 3 foot by 3 foot? And so for me, that is one of the currents, and then underplant that depending on how much sun you've got. Underplant that with some California aster. And as that's growing in, put in those poppies and the Clarkia and the baby blue eyes and the Chinese houses, put in those annuals, put in some of the Mariposa lily. Just one sort of big shrub and something else that's going to fill in with rhizomes, and then a bunch of annuals. And that gives me the most bang for my buck. And I'm looking when I'm saying California aster, I'm looking for something that's late blooming. So it could be California aster, Grindalia, the golden aster, or the coyote bush, any of those underneath. And if you're going to want the lower coyote bush for that, otherwise it's like this tall eventually. So we also do restoration. We do advocacy. Climate Action Plan is starting this Wednesday. Yes.
I think I asked in the presentation.
Yeah.
What plant that you showed.
So it should have been the sunflower, but it was actually the Clarkia. I got a Clarkia problem. I've got a very good friend who won't plant pink flowers. The rest of us will make up for that. So, all right. So did I miss anybody's favorite bee plants? Okay, great. Then let's open it. Oh, so let me put this back on the year-long buffet because we got to feed those bees. There we are. Questions? Yes. Yeah, sure. So those are for those deadwood nesting bees slash stem nesting bees. And they were developed for the mason bee, which is another native bee that is used in commercial agriculture pollination. And so my recommendation is you go listen to pollination, just go take a look. They've got a fairly recent one. I might listen to everything. They're really good. They've got a fairly recent one about bee houses. In fact, they do one on mason bee houses like every few months, and they're just updating things. There's some particularly good place for that. I am incredibly lazy, so I'm really, yeah, what we do. You, yes, we.
We have bees in there.
Yeah.
If they occasionally go in there, we get sugar. There's we've seen it in a mountain level or I just think that the whole of somebody put down a oak tree and they're jumping off the stage. You just went in the signs.
Yeah, mounted level and facing the sun.
it was about 3/8 inch bit, 3/4 inch. And you get little, you can see there's little like leaves sticking up the walls and stuff.
They're really cute.
Is bee plant a good plant for bees?
Absolutely. So even though it's not a great specialist bee plant, it's one of those plants that blooms March to June when everything else does. But I'll see, so right now I'm seeing bees, it's just started blooming, the bee plant does. I see blooms on California lilac, bee plant, poppies, and lupins. With everything blooming, that's where I'm seeing the bees. As Phacelia starts to bloom in May, I'll see them on Phacelia. But bee plant's a fantastic plant, and the leaves are needed by the variable checker spot butterfly and its rhizomes, and it's a really tough plant. So bee plant usually makes my list of tough plants, but just because it's not a specialist bee plant, it didn't on this. Susan. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Really? Oh, wow. Do you know?
They weren't always very specific, and so they said San Francisco. But they might have, I don't know, it might have just been more. So.
Do you know which? I'll check which one is on San Bruno Mountain. Thank you. Is that Californica? Do you know? Okay. Cool. I have not. Is it here? Where? Nice.
Hills, they call it.
Nice. It's at the Presidio.
That's what silver.
Nice. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's the picture we've got here. They really vary in terms of that flower shape, but that's the one that's East Bay and also here. It sounds like that's fantastic. Well, good. Because it's supposed to be a really tough plant. Oh, nice. Is it mint family? Do you know? Okay. Nice. Nice. Oh, Amsynchia's in the dunes. Beautiful. Okay. Oh, okay. So we have to be careful. With the rose family, you have to be really careful about which part of the plant that you eat. There's I can't remember. Yes.
The floral store. People would use it, people use it to ask the girlfriends or something. Or the other, yeah, for Valentine's Day. And those roses can be edible.
I would not eat something from a flower store. Those are not. Don't do that. Those have been treated.
Oh,
Um,
You're right.
You want to eat a rose, go eat the roses at Francisco Park. They're native roses, they're fine. There's a lot of thorns, but those rose hips are safe. Oh, Francisco Park, the one that we're doing a tour of, May 4th. And not that I would ever recommend that you eat something in a park, I have just been reminded. So you wouldn't want to go to Golden Gate Park and eat any of the thimbleberries the last 2 weeks of June. They're near the redwood forest and also in the back of the children's garden. It's got all the great food plants where you are allowed to eat it. You wouldn't want to eat food out of our parks. But I've got things planted in other green spaces that are Department of Public Works spaces and water company spaces. And because we planted them, we have permission to collect. So both to eat and cuttings and seeds. So if there is something you want, and you want to try to propagate it, if you're living on standing parts, and please talk to Sophie and to Susan back there if you're interested in propagating. If you just want to come collect random things to grow in your backyard, you're also welcome to talk to me and come clip things out of my spaces because we've got a lot of extra. Yes. Thank you. If you are not sure,
You can't give somebody advice that you plant if they're not experts.
yes.
Careful on that.
If I'm not standing in front of you eating it with you, or someone else is not standing in front of you, making sure that you know. Thank you.
If you're certain what it is, be sure to wash it first.
Also that. So every,
It should be okay to eat.
so everything we do is free. If you've got a large native garden with a lot of extra plants, you can dig them out and we'll give them away. David, thank you so much for all of the trees you've donated. We've got propagators who will grow them up to be a little bit bigger and give them away. We've got a lot of spaces to give plants away. It is one of the things that we do. And if you're having trouble finding a plant, even if it's for your own garden, just reach out to us and go, hey, I can't find X. And we'll see if we can show you where that is or if we're propagating it. We want to make sure that we've got these corridors, that we've got something blooming all the time, that we've got these corridors, that everybody gets a chance to feed the rest of our ecosystem. But yeah, absolutely do not eat it unless you are absolutely certain what it is. Although it sounds like the lady behind you can help you understand what the strawberry tree is, because yeah, please eat that when it's bright red. Not native. Please eat as much as you want.
What's the fruit look like?
It's
Something from the, both with a shrub or a tree, as long as they're there and they're wet, you can actually like pluck them and eat them. Just like you said, might as well wash them just in case.
yeah, absolutely wash them. So it's the same red as this color. So if it's yellow or orange, which is what it goes through before it ends up red, just don't eat it. It's going to be nasty. And if you eat a fruit that's red from a tree and if you're like, oh, that's nasty, why would anyone eat it? Try that from a different tree. Because they brought them here as ornamental trees, they didn't bring them to be delicious. In Ina Coburth Park, we've got a bunch of those trees, and some of the trees have delicious fruit and some of them just are nasty.
Just for the information, those Chinese bayberries, also known as Chinese strawberries, are beneficial to the humans, well, to the human body because they provide a lot of nutrients in them.
But they're tasteless. Close.
Yeah, they're not, it depends on which tree you eat it from. I've had some that were nasty. Yes. Yes. So if it's a Department of Public Works site, they're desperate to have you help them. Each district has one workday a year. Go ahead and sign up for the workday and then talk to the Department of Public Works person that's there. It's called the Love Our City event. Or you can just contact volunteer at sfpw.com. Thank you. I think it's org or whatever it is. Their volunteer thing, if you look under Love Our City, they'll tell you who to contact and then just say, hey, there's this green space near me. I'm pretty sure it's not a park. And I'm pretty sure it's not a park is the Rec and Park. The reservoirs are the water company. Stuff along the edge is usually the port, although sometimes the parks. And all of those stairway gardens, that's all Department of Public Works. So if it's just some random piece of ground that looks unmaintained, it's probably Department of Public Works. They are desperate for help. And so I get permission from them, I get permission from the water company, and I get permission from Rec and Park. So that's the thing. If you've got some neighbors that will help water or a Girl Scout troop that will help water, it just depends on. I'm doing none of this alone. None of this alone, none of this alone. None of us are doing this alone. Alone is just too hard. Together, we are a force of nature. Alone, we're just, yeah, it doesn't work for us. And the Randall really needs help with their garden if you live nearby. Does anyone live nearby? Oh, okay. It is shocking how many neighbors will just donate water, which is great. Means I don't have to haul it. Yeah, and so that's what the other place public space that we, is a utilities easement. We haven't contacted the utilities, but we also haven't grown anything with a serious taproot, because it's a really tough space. And yeah, that's turned out great. Yeah, go ahead.
Can compete with the process and, stuff that is basically.
Well, it depends on where you're at. If the scrub plant, a lot of the scrub, the coyote brush, and mostly when you're trying to move, to nativize an area, you usually just have to give it water for the first 2 or 3 years. And mostly, if it rains a lot in the winter, then, nothing doing with that. But with the first summer, stuff, you have the water to get those young plants going. And then after that, once they're established, they'll grow and grow. They're usually drought. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking about that because I don't know anybody else on the Esmeralda stairway. So it's really great to hear about your experience. Yes, please. That would be great. Bob.
Concurring with what Eddie said, they're doing a lot of restoration here, and he has this scrub kit, basically, it's like, suite of scrub species that, when in doubt, scrub it out.
Yeah.
So much of it, and critical mass, and so there's a lot of wildlife. And so it depends on what area you're in.
Like a triangular space that could be 60 properties. But most of the Russian.
Oh.
That's perfect for that. And also if it's real sandy, you can put in those coastal dirt, that dune stuff. They call it dune stuff because it's sandy and slow. And they're real aggressive plants. You know, the bush would, they'll take off.
And we'll donate those plants to you. So if you coordinate with trying to get some of those weeds out, we'll donate plants.
I don't
Reach out to them.
just don't know the neighbors right next to it.
I think there's an echo. Oh, I can go ahead and be.
Clear site for that they have, and they can basically set a very piece of property and just go and do their responsible.
Probably tell us what script it is for the people who are typing our questions and answers and this.
Oh, thank you, Sophie.
Maybe,
I do not.
so, script it, so scrub.
Oh,
Your sagebrush, coyote brush,
So plants that grow in dune scrub.
They're tough plants.
but I'm talking about ones that can withstand the annual invasives. So you're not gonna, if you plant a seaside daisy, that's only gonna be a foot tall, it's gonna get lost,
Yeah,
you're gonna have to weed. So it limits diversity, but
Lizard tail?
Yeah.
Lizard tail can be in your kit.
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Okay. Is that Eric?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the coffee berry, even manzanitas,
Yeah, this way manzanitas are winter bloom.
yeah, you know.
Nice. I missed coffee berry on this list. It needs to be here. And it's a nice, tough plant.
You know,
Yeah. Yes, this is amazing. Let's go.
We're at 9:21, I don't know what the time.
Do we have more questions? I mean, realize it's a school night. Previous afterwards. All right, thank you so much for coming.
There's some swag here, if anybody's interested in free magazine. And they, take it out. You want to come on? Another box.
Sharing.
Yeah, well,